We also have Russell. Russell is an independent researcher whose work lies in the intersection of a very important aspect of intergenerational trauma, aesthetics, gender, and in fact neurodivergence in Dalit communities. We have let me now invite Russell. Of course, Russell is an independent researcher and works basically at the intersection of intergenerational trauma, aesthetics, gender. Again, a very important domain. I remember I read a very recent piece of Russell on Arivu's Enjoy Enjami in the Indian Express, a great piece. So, without further ado, I invite Russell uh, with her presentation. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Jayleen. Thank you, Subhajit, for moderating this panel. And I'd like to thank Sharpen and Life of Science project for putting this together. I want to, of course, we've heard from such various perspectives what happens in higher educational institutions, and just at the aftermath of Seema Singh's video, there was a lot of Twitter spaces that hosted discussions around casteism. And this is, in many ways, this is not new, as many people have told. This has constantly happened in IITs. It's just because of pandemic has enabled this virtual video conferencing thing, and we have been able to record, and we have the proof that this has come to light. I am from an IIT, and I don't know how many people are aware, but IITs have a very specific way of handling not just casteist or any other grievances that come to them, but the one of the things that Seema Singh said in the video was that you can go to any, you can go to the SCSC cell, you can go to the women's cell, but nothing can be done. She's saying that so brazenly because that is the kind of shield that many IIT, in fact, all IIT professors have. And this goes back to the history of why IITs were established. It dates back to that IIT Kharagpur being the first IIT and inaugurated by Nehru. And if people have read Nehru's inaugural address, there's a very, of course, there's this very liberal, light, left-leaning idea of what these institutions are supposed to be. They're supposed to be institutions which where you can learn, you can have like excellence, which is what all IITs, they strive for. But also this thread of that we will go beyond caste or religion or any of these things, and have this idea of like Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam sort of a thread that goes in his speech. And in fact, IIT Kharagpur is established, the ground is established in a detention camp. It's called the HD detention camp, and it was historical because it was the camp that was set up during pre-independence era as a detention camp for Indians. And it's quite ironic that now the same place is the same institute is acting, which many IITs do, in that sort of like a prison where we go for like safe space. And as many of us know, higher education spaces are safe spaces, are spaces that are supposed to nurture you. And because we come from, and many of our students come from difficult backgrounds, we look to educational institutions to give us that sort of a space, whether that's mental space, whether that's space that you have a room to study for yourself, whether that's a space where you're able to interact with a lot of people, and you expect all of this, but it ends up being like a detention camp, and you really can't do much. And IITs have the Senate really holds a lot of power. In other central institutions, um, there are students who've constantly fought for the visibility of discrimination on campuses, and they can name the VCs and they can even go to court. But IITs are not set up that way, and they're purposefully set up that way to politicize the campus. And this is something that happened in my IIT as well, where when you enter the IIT, you will have a form which says that you cannot take part in any student political groups, or you cannot start any of it. Um, and you have to sign those forms to even get in, and which is why you don't have the visibility of any of the other student political, like if you have it in JNU or TIS or University of Hyderabad, we don't have that in IITs. And any issue that you have has to be taken to the Senate, and Senates in IITs have always been historically predominated by BTech students and, of course, cis men, and they don't have enough representation within the Senate itself. And any sort of grievance, even if it is a sexual harassment grievance, even if it is something to do with some professors like wrongfully marking you, you have to go to the Senate. And if a professor is treating you, it's like casteist towards you, you really cannot appeal to a higher court, because the IIT, the director of the IIT has, in fact, an inordinate amount of power, and the only person who can sort of supersede that is the President of India. And there have been cases where it's mostly where employees or professors of IITs have contested this, and they've gone for either a promotion or a payment or something like that. But there are really, really very few cases where students themselves have gone ahead and filed a case. There's one case of IIT Kharagpur, a student who went to court, went to smaller court, and then was referred back to the IIT for whatever action that needs to be taken, and the institute decided to rusticate him. And I think the judgment says that it is the court, it's a small court, this court that exceeded its power. And this is a level of power that an IIT holds, that the director of an institution holds. So it's not simply enough for us to say that of course, end casteism in IIT, end casteism in all higher education institutions, but this is really a problem of the legal framework of how IITs have been set up, and that needs to be changed. And there's very, very little work that is being done, because some of which is said as the pros of the IIT system is that the professors enjoy complete freedom in how the courses are done. And if you have, like in my own experience, the very first semester I went to IIT, I had experiences where my professor was grading me less, and I spoke to some of the other students, and as many people have said that these are professors who are part of like left parties. They are very like at the face level, they're very, very progressive, but they have a history of doing this, and I know that they've done this to other marginalized community students in all of the previous years. But there's really no action that I could take, because the only appeal is the Senate, which is the student Senate. And I was doing my master's, so there's already that divide that happens. And if it goes beyond the Senate, it goes to the faculty Senate. And because there is very, very less representation. In my campus, IIT Gandhinagar, there was only one Dalit professor. and everybody else was Savarna. So there's not much support that you can expect from any place. And if I was in whatever capacity, if I was rusticated from the university, I wouldn't even be able to contest that in court. Even leaving aside how difficult legal access is, or forgetting that that aspect of having someone defend you, even to get to court is like a difficult process if you are an IIT student, which is why most IIT students don't really do much. In fact, the alumni statement that was put forward, you're able to do it in some capacity because you've passed out in an IIT and there's no fear. But when I was a student and the MTech fee hike happened, there were hardly, and most people disagreed with the fee hike. It was taken in the IIT Directors Council decision. Most students disagreed, and when you are from a science background, it's a little more difficult, which is how, and which is something that we can see from Raj's Losha list also. Most of the professors named were social sciences professors and humanities professors. There's hardly any professors from the science background that were named. And that's not because there aren't any of those cases. It's just because the science communities tied so closely that word gets spread so quickly around these labs or these professors. And if you take any sort of action, or even if you address it, you're looking essentially at the end of your research career. You're not going to get recommendations. You're not going to be able to go outside the country to pursue anything that you want to. So most students do keep quiet, and these sort of microaggressions keep building up. And it's true because we don't have strong communities or strong student groups where we can go and address this. And there are only few IITs. Some of the older IITs have like Makepeace, study circle, or things like that. But some of the newer IITs, like my IIT, doesn't have one. It doesn't have an equal opportunity cell. It doesn't have, and in fact, I think IIT Kharagpur has an internal complaints ICC, which is one of the ways that they say that we don't really require an equal opportunity cell because you have this and you can address everything here. But it really doesn't take into account some of the other discriminations that students face in these institutions. And also, one of the other points that I wanted to make was uh, when we talk about collectivizing and having a sort of cross solidarity, we must also acknowledge that um, when we say marginalized communities, who are we really like including in this space? Because we have as like a trans person or an NB person and queerness, and all of these are also marginalized identities. But then we are collectivizing around that. And my IIT had a queer club, but it didn't have an SCST thing. And when I started a study circle there, I was constantly asked, why are you naming it like Savitri Visa, all of that sort of a thing. And the discrimination that happens is often very, it is subtle, but it's also overt. Like I've had emails that have come to me saying that the same old arguments about reservations, and these are, I think, just like Seema Singh, these are students who have written papers on reservation, which are published in very well-known journals. There was only one ST student in my batch, but there are at least four professors who are working on Adivasi communities. And often these professors get invited to events where, whether there is like an Ambedkar Jayanti event or anything like that. So when we look at allyship are most, because we don't have communities to go towards, we look at the professors who we think might be allies to us, or we go towards students who are closest to us, but those don't serve, and they mostly are like self-serving things that happen. So which is why there is a need to define what, or even like how we collectivize. And the idea of appropriation is not being given due importance, which is why we still have Brahmin scholars being cited for Dalit feminist work, even though there's a huge and long history of Dalit feminism, or even within, and I think that there are like other people on the panel who can speak to this when we have the question of gender neutrality, um, or gender neutral hostels and campuses, which is something that's happening. So who gets to be in these gender neutral hostels when the institution has not even established an equal opportunity cell? And if I, as a trans NB person, is in this gender neutral hostel, who am I sharing space with? Am I going to share it with Brahmin students? Am I going to share it with other Savarna students? And the discrimination just disappear because we share a particular gender identity, or a particular, there's a queerness that comes there. And I think another important thing I think is to address is, how do we come together, not just by sort of equating all identities together, because we cannot talk to an Adivasi identity or an OBC identity, and the same cannot be, it cannot be vice versa, which is what I see happening a lot. And That sort of discrimination within that, the inter-community discriminations, also don't get acknowledged within university spaces or campus spaces. Um, because yes, there is no SASC cell, but also because there's hardly any faculty or anything within these campuses that make life easier for you or for you to go, and it becomes an individual thing. It becomes something that you have to talk and like move towards a certain space. And I think that's where I'll end it, that we have to be able to talk to each other and understand each other, even within marginalized communities, and move to a better place instead of having the umbrella of collectivization, which doesn't serve anybody. Jerry, thank you.
Thank you so much, Russell, for coming up with those nuances and insights. Again, and thanks for talking a bit about the science communities. That's again something which is rarely being talked about. Even the life of science organizers are doing it for some time, that I have got to know. But these are very, very new nuances, and of course, and the science communities and the gatekeeping, it of course has created some kind of caste habitus over there. And you do not have a Dalit Adivasi student in the class, but then you have all the Savarna professors, their main expertise is on Dalit Adivasi subaltern studies. So which is what, that's the irony in fact, this casteist Professor Seema Singh, she has written a paper on subaltern studies, which is what the irony is, that, and here is this professor who also is calling the marginalized caste students as so this is, again, probably this is the reason where there is no critical scholarship has not come up the way it has come up in the West, probably in the United States, where there is a lot of research done on white privilege and whiteness, but that's not the case with the Savarna academicians in India. They are still engaged to keep, in fact, the Dalit Adivasi lives, Dalit Adivasi Bahujan lives, the marginalized communities' lives, and they are sort of making careers over it, rather than sort of looking within or interrogating their own privilege. So there's probably no work. There's a big no in their work to interrogate their own privilege. So there is no critical scholarship on that. I once again thank Rachelle for that wonderful presentation.